Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. On the evening of that first day of the week, when the doors were locked, where the disciples were, for fear of the Jews, Jesus came and stood in their midst. And he said to them, "Peace be with you." When he had said this, he showed them his hands and his side. The disciples rejoiced when they saw the Lord. And Jesus said to them again, "Peace be with you." And when he had said this, he breathed on them and said to them, "Receive the Holy Spirit. Whose sins you forgive are forgiven them, and whose sins you retain are retained." Thomas, called Didymus, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. So the other disciples said to him, "We have seen the Lord." But he said to them, "Unless I see the mark of the nails in his hands, and put my finger into the nail marks, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." Now a week later, his disciples were again inside, and Thomas was with them. Jesus came, although the doors were locked, and stood in their midst and said, "Peace be with you." Then he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hands, and bring your hand and put it into my side, and do not be unbelieving, but believe." Thomas answered and said to him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you come to believe because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and have believed." Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples that are not written in this book. But these are written that you may come to believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that through this belief you may have life in his name. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good afternoon. How's it going? Okay. In our Gospel, we have the story of Thomas, which we're all familiar with. You know, Thomas was not with the disciples when Jesus appeared to them. It was only a week later when he came back, and the others said to him, "We have seen the Lord." How did he react to that? Well, I'll add a few words to what the Gospels say. He probably said, "Are you crazy? What have you been smoking? I mean, I know that Jesus died. I know where he is buried. And now you say to me, 'We have seen the Lord.' What do you take me to be, a fool? I will not believe until I can see and I can touch." That's Thomas. And you know what? We're just like Thomas. Exactly like Thomas. I'll give you an example. Supposing you had a friend, we'll call him Joe, okay? And Joe died. And you were at Joe's funeral. Then you went to the cemetery afterwards, and you were there when they buried Joe. Okay? Now, a week later, some other friends of Joe come up to you and say, "We have seen Joe. He's alive." How would you react? Sure. Yeah. How would you react? You'd probably say, "What's wrong with you? You lost your mind? I was at his funeral. I saw him buried. And now you tell me he's alive? What do you take me for, a fool? I will not believe this." Aren't we just like Thomas? I mean, sure we are. Thomas's reaction was a very normal one. It reminds me of words that were written by the former Bishop of Saginaw, Michigan, Bishop Kenneth Untner, when he was writing about resurrection. And he said, when we're dealing with something like resurrection, our words will never do it. It's beyond our words. The hardest thing in the world to believe is life after death. And it's also the most wonderful thing to believe. And we are asking people to bet their lives on it. Very, very important words. So today, I have one question for you. Do you believe that Jesus was risen from the dead?
Yes.
Do you really believe it?
Yes.
Well, you say, yes, I believe that for my whole life, you know. I mean, we've been celebrating Easter for as long as I can remember, and we're pretty used to it. Of course I believe it. Resurrection is not one of those things that we believe, of course. Resurrection of Jesus is the most important article of our faith. Think about it. If it is true that Jesus was raised from the dead, that validates everything he has said and everything he has done. If that's true. I mean, in other words, when we say that Jesus saved us when he died, that's not a myth. It's true. If he was raised from the dead. When Jesus said to us, if you believe in me, I will give you life everlasting. That's not a joke or an empty promise. That's a fact. That's what Jesus said. And he means it. You see, everything hangs on that resurrection. It validates everything else about Jesus. So once again, do you believe Jesus was raised from the dead?
Yes.
Do you really?
Yes.
Now remember, resurrection is not resuscitation. Resuscitation means a person has apparently died for one reason or another, but they were able to bring him back to continue the same life he had before. And he was going to die again. That's resuscitation. That's not what resurrection is. Resurrection means that Jesus was raised to an entirely new, glorious life, state of existence that will never end. That's resurrection. Do you believe that? Do you really believe that? Well, my friends, and I speak to myself as well as I speak to you, we need to think about that. It's too crucial. It's too critical. It's the foundation of our faith. We need to really think about it. As Bishop Untner said, we can't understand it. It's beyond our words, but it's worth our thought. It's worth our thought. And it's worth wondering about, because it is full of wonder. And Jesus said, and if we believe him, he meant it. Jesus said in our gospel, blessed are those who have not seen and have believed. You and I are those blessed ones.